Hello, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. I'm Bekah, and this is a podcast that features members of the Virtual Coffee community. Virtual Coffee is an intimate group of developers at all stages of their coding journey, and they're here on this podcast sharing their stories and what they've learned. And we're here to share it with you. Here with me today is my co-host, Dan.
Thanks, Bekah. What's going on? Today we talk with Amy Shackles. Amy is a senior software engineer at MURAL. MURAL is a really cool company, a really cool product. It's a sort of an online collaboration tool and a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. So we got to hear a lot about MURAL and working there and also the tool. What else did we talk about, Bekah?
Yeah, we talked about how much Amy loves her job, but she always talks about it. She's like, I'm not just saying this because it's my product, but it's really nice to hear her talk about enjoying what she does, because I feel like we're always getting almost like horror stories of terrible jobs. And sometimes we lose sight of there are good places out there. And so it's great to have Amy's energy and to hear about what that path was.
Yeah, 100% agree. It was really great hearing about her journey and what all they do there at MURAL that makes it a good experience. And God, I'm so bad at ending things. That is my worst skill, is ending sentences, paragraphs, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not particularly good at it. We're good podcast hosts. We should bring in a guest ender for things. And They're just there to finish our sentences and our paragraphs and the end of the show.
Yes.
That's just their job. Ender. Like a closer in baseball.
Yeah. I like it. Let's do that. Okay. Well, we don't have our closer yet. So
if you want a job as closer, you can email podcast@virtualcoffee.io.
Yes. Auditions start tomorrow. Anyway, it was a good time. This is all I was trying to say. We had a great time talking with Amy, and I know you're going to enjoy it.
Yes, she does a better job of ending things. So go, Amy. We start every episode of the podcast like we start every virtual coffee. We introduce ourselves with our name, where we're from, what we do, and a random check-in question. We hope you enjoy this episode. Today's check-in question is, if you were a vending machine, what would you dispense? And I'm cheating a little bit because this is the one that we used this morning at Virtual Coffee.
I was going to say, I'm primed for this one.
Oh, man.
I already know my answer. I don't have to think about it.
So I had a bad answer before.
I'm just getting punished for not making it to the meeting.
That's right. I'm Bekah. I am a technical community builder from a small town in Ohio, and I would dispense kindness.
Oh, that's nice. That's heartwarming.
Making fun of me for dispensing kindness?
Not cool.
Hi, I'm Dan. I am a web developer from Cleveland, Ohio, and I mean, always the questions, what would you want to dispense or what would you actually dispense? Because those answers are different. I think right now, I would be dispensing free anxiety for people. That's all I have a surplus of right now. But I think if I had to choose anything, maybe like camping tools or camping supplies, something like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. Titanium silverware, or I don't know, fire starters and pocket knife or something. I don't know. Pocket knife might be a little dicey, but stuff you need for camping. That's going to be my real answer. I think that's it. Camping one. That'd be cool. Vending machine.
That is a really good answer. Camping supplies. I agree with you with the avoidance of including knives and that. Just you don't know if
probably not
children
knives,
are gonna want to use your vending machine. If I were a vending machine, what would I dispense? I think I would dispense very intricate paper hearts with uplifting messages of hope.
Well, that's cool.
I like
like
that.
like origami heart, like 3D or 2D hearts?
That's a good question. I was thinking 2D because I was thinking that it would be like calligraphy on it with the messages of hope.
Yeah.
So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it could be one of those. What do you call those?
Yeah, fortune teller.
Yeah, fortune tellers. You open different sections, and it would be a different message of hope.
I think I have one of those on my desk.
Yes, I love that. Oh man.
All right,
That's
and your name, where are you from, what you do?
Sorry. Yes, my name's Amy Shackles. I'm a senior software engineer at MURAL, and yeah, that's what I do.
That's awesome. Hey, I have a question about MURAL. MURAL, every time I see it, is spelled in all capital letters. Is it a what do you call it? Is it an abbreviation? No, I mean
I don't believe it's an acronym. No.
Acronym, yeah. It's not an acronym. Okay.
It's
just stylistic.
It's just stylistic.
That's cool. Something I've wondered, for a while.
It's a good question.
Nice.
All right. Thanks so much for being here with us today, Amy. We always like to start off with the origin stories. So tell us a little bit about how you got to this point in your life.
Good question. Well, once upon a time I was born, and probably don't need to go back that far. So growing up, always thought that I wanted to be a psychologist. So I did my undergrad in psychology and anthropology because I loved people and the study of people, thus the anthropology, which was funny because my anthropology professor understood the double major with psychology. The psychology professor did not understand how those would relate, and it was just funny that there was a disconnect. But I realized I'm the kind of person who people have the tendency to open up to me and share their secrets and their struggles, and I tend to want to respond by sharing things about myself. And you can't do that as a psychologist. You're banned, no personal sharing. And so I'm that I would be a really bad psychologist. I can't turn that part of myself off. It's not going to happen. So I didn't pursue psychology, even though I have a degree in it. And so I got out of college and I was a transcriptionist for a decade, just listening to audio, typing what you hear, which was great. Except the robots are getting better at it. And so
it's the company I work for.
So we're being replaced. So I decided to switch careers, and my husband was a software developer, software engineer, and so I had an idea of what that life was like, and I wanted it for myself. So I did a boot camp, and then just started working in tech. So
that's awesome. How long ago did you do the boot camp?
I started in April 2018. I ended in October 2018.
Nice. That's really cool. So when you were doing transcription, was it a normal keyboard, or were you doing is it one of those? I don't know.
Fancy
is it one of those
keyboards?
Yeah,
stenography?
No. Yeah, stenography. That's it.
Yeah, I never used a stenography machine.
Okay, yeah.
I used a regular keyboard.
Sure.
I used to have a way faster typing speed than I currently do.
Man, yeah, that skill is an impressive skill to me. I don't know if I could do it for even more than 5 minutes.
It's hard. I did it once for an event. All I had to do was one talk, and it took me so long to do that talk. This was not worth it.
Yeah, the trick is knowing that foot pedals exist and you can use them. It's what most of us use when we
Wait, how do you use foot?
Yeah. So you just plug it into your computer. There's a play pad, a fast forward and a rewind. You can usually configure it to do it the other direction. Some people decide to have rewind on the right instead of the left. It kind of varies. You can have your playback replay the last 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever. So it just depends on your own personal.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have a special keyboard, but you had secret tools. That's right. Okay. The truth comes out. That's awesome. That's really cool. Obviously also a good idea. I've just seen, they've probably been around for a while, but I just saw them coming out for gaming and stuff, or they're streaming or I don't know, something, but always seemed like a good idea, unused appendages for when you're working or
it's an extension of yourself.
I mean, your feet are just sitting there most of the time doing nothing.
It's
Get
true.
them to work.
One of the downsides of being a transcriptionist, though, with a foot pedal is that you can't really do a standing desk because you need that foot on the floor. It'd be really awkward to have to balance.
That'd be tough. Okay, all right. So you went from transcription, then you went to boot camp, and you graduated in 2020, right?
2018.
Oh, 2018. And then did you start working at Mural? No, you weren't at Mural first.
No, I was at Skipless first.
Okay. So what was that transition like from boot camp into your first job?
It's a good question. The transition for me was kind of interesting insofar as like when I started my job at Skiplist, I was already the React expert, and I was working on an application that was React and Redux. And so from like the jump, I was already the person with the most experience with React and Redux, and I had to like refactor the entire application because it was written kind of jankily. It was a lot of responsibility from the get-go, which was good.
Sounds super stressful.
A little bit.
All right. And then one of the things that I always love hearing you talk about is Mural. And just for reference, this is not a sponsored episode of the podcast. But Amy, you always talk about how much you love it. And I like hearing you talk about it because I often hear people talk about how terrible their jobs are. So anytime someone has a good experience, I always want to know more about that. So what kind of drew you to Mural, and what do you think makes it a good place to work?
What drew me to Mural, I'll be honest, was that I had a friend that worked there and gave me an internal referral. So I'm not one of those people that knew the product and loved the product and then joined the company. But I fell in love with it afterward. I use it all the time. I recommend it to friends. I think I recommended it to you at one point because you were looking for a tool.
Yeah, we got a team account on there.
Yes. But things that I love working there for, reasons I love working there, include like the fact that it's actually really global. Like some companies say that they're global, but it's like you have a team in India, you have a team in the United States, and those teams don't really interact with each other. Like if you do, it's occasional, it's not an everyday thing. But my team specifically, like I think now we're finally at a point that there are more Americans than there are Argentinians. But when I first started, it was just Argentinians and I. And so there's that 4-hour gap for part of the year and 5-hour gap for another part of the year. So because we have so many people from different regions, there's a lot of like having to understand that communication is easily misunderstood and you have to be patient. It's like the same thing that we talk about in virtual coffee, like being receptive to how other people interact and like taking it on good faith that like they're not intentionally being abrupt or rude or whatever. Like there's lots of things that can be lost in translation. And one of the things I really love is that they're like very encouraging of me to like try to learn Spanish. I'm like working on it. I'm still pretty terrible, but learning Argentinian Spanish is like I love it so much. It's like so different than the Spanish I grew up with in like high school learning Spanish. But I just love how like everybody's like open and receptive to like helping other people, and like even if it's not your team, everyone bands together over a problem. Like it's just really communal in the way that we operate, I guess. It's one of the reasons I love it.
I was just gonna say I'm glad to hear that, like that, and it is also not surprising, I guess, that a company like Mural, where their product is about collaboration and team building and stuff like that, that they also have like they reflect that in internally. It's cool. Yeah, it's not always true, but it says a lot about the product too, I think, right? Because I imagine you guys, do you use Mural?
Oh yeah, all
in
the
the
time.
company? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
All
Like,
the time.
yeah, I didn't want to make assumptions,
Every
but
meeting.
the fact
Every
that
meeting is with
the
it.
fact that like you're using your own tool at, as probably pretty heavily, and you probably depend on it. The tool that you're making and selling to other people, it's says a lot, a lot of good things about the tool itself. So that's pretty cool to have that, and I'm working right now on an app for the company that makes like pressure gauges and stuff, and it's like great work. And like, this is not anything against my team, but I'm not like going out there getting excited about pressure gauges in my life. We don't have like meetings where we're looking at it, or we're I don't know. We talk sometimes about trying to like blow into it to see how, if we can if we can get the pressure gauge to, I don't know, do something, but it's not the same, it's not the same. So it's cool that you guys have this tool that, like, what do they call it? Oh, dog fooding, right? That's dog fooding. we
I
have
hate
jokes
that
about that.
phrase so
I
hard.
know, it's not a good one. It's not a good one, but I think that it's at least the right thing where you're using the thing that you're selling to other people or whatever, right? Probably helps it make it better. Do you
I
guys?
mean, we definitely
Go ahead.
feel the pain points that our
Yeah,
customers
yeah,
feel because we run up against the same blocks, and more often than not, like we develop features because we want them, and
yeah.
other people also want them, and like we discover bugs before our customers do most of the time because we are also using the product. So
Yes, that's well put, and that is exactly what I was sort of getting towards. Was that, you know what I mean? It's like you're naturally improving the product, even when you're not like, writing code or not working on it. You know what I mean? Because you use it so much. It's really neat.
Customer
It's a
zero.
unique customer zero. That's
customer zero makes
it's,
it sound like it's the beginning of an infectious disease.
yeah. I was
Not
thinking more
that.
like some sort of spy movie or something, but yeah. Customer zero. Oh man, yeah. Well, thank you for that.
How this
Oh,
podcast ends up being 20 minutes.
Okay.
uh,
Okay. I'm going to back up and get on track here a little bit. All right. So you went from boot camp and then you had a couple of jobs, and you are a senior software engineer. And I feel like you've accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. So good job and congratulations. But also, what is that career progression like for you? I know that, a lot of people, especially who are coming out of boot camp or self-taught, like, am I in entry level? Am I mid level? Like, how did that feel as you made that career progression?
Yeah, so if I'm honest, like that's the one thing that's been like the struggle for me ever since I got out of boot camp is like I apply for entry level positions and I apply for mid level positions, and then sometimes when I'm feeling confident, I apply for senior positions. And it just worked out that this time they thought I was a senior engineer because of my previous experience. But I've definitely had interviews with companies at like mid level. Uh, I think even some junior positions where they're like, "Yeah, you don't really have the level of experience that we were looking for." It's just that's the one thing that's really frustrating about the software engineering space is just there's so many differences in opinion about what it means to be an engineer. Like a lot of it is mindset. I feel like the ability to learn new things and pick things up quickly and then work iteratively on solutions is like the most important thing, but it's hard to pinpoint where people are in that journey. So, like, it's a struggle that everybody has. And so I can't really give advice on how to gauge where you are because I struggled with it also. I'm glad that a company made the decision for me and that going forward I can just say I'm a senior engineer because I am. But before that, I was kind of lost to the wind.
yeah, that I like the way you said that about excuse me, about being able to like learn things and then iterate, on like improving them and stuff like that. I feel like for me, one of the, and well, there's a lot of different things going on in this in like this process of job finding and like level setting yourself and things like that, right? But um, for me with development, especially when you get to senior levels or whatever, it's a lot less, or it should be anyway, a lot less about like a specific checkbox on a list of skills or whatever, and more about mindset. It's just exactly the way you put it. That like the ability and the confidence that you can, pick things up um, and that you'll be able to learn things, and that you have to learn things. Like everybody learns like that's part of the developer being a developer, experience, right? Is having to learn things all the time. I've been doing this for a really long time and still I'm learning new things every day, it's one of the things I like about it, but it's and I feel like that's people get caught up, I think, when they're younger, well, not younger, but earlier in the career, in trying to match those check boxes or whatever. And this job listings always have these ridiculous requirements that were written by a marketing person probably. And uh, but that process of learning things, iterating on them, and and then learning, moving on and learning new things, that's the real thing, right? And I feel like that's the thing that sets aside or sets apart people that maybe I would call senior, senior level at least, than not, is less like all of the things I know and more like sort of internal confidence that I can take a thing and then learn it and then do it. I think that's I guess cool.
I think
Go
it's less
ahead.
about like pretending that you know things or like waffling on like what you know, like trying desperately to pull things in, and more like admitting you don't know it, but you can know it.
Yes.
I will learn it in the future, but I'm not gonna say that I know it now because that's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like if I was doing if I was conducting an interview and I asked somebody, "Oh, can you do X or whatever?" and they said, maybe, or so, like waffling, just like you said, that would be not as like, but if somebody said, "No, I do know that. I don't know that, but I know that I could pick it up." You know what I mean? Without any waffling, that's a big sign for me, that's cool. That's good to hear. Do you, in your position as senior, do you do much management at all, or are you doing mostly just coding? Or
I am just doing coding. I am not in the management track at all. We
nice,
have two different tracks, and I chose the one that involves engineering
yeah,
because I've had so many friends that they level up in engineering and then become managers, and they hate it because it's just managing people, and they never get to touch code, and they're like, "Why am I even an engineer now? This isn't fun anymore." And I'm like, it's not for me, at least not now. Maybe in the future, but it's not where I see myself
oh,
currently.
absolutely, a completely different skill set too, right? So you're all of a sudden starting from zero in a new job. I think some people, like companies, don't understand that lots of times, and people that are accepting the positions maybe don't always grab that either. But that's really cool that Mural has that track, even at being at a senior level, that you can concentrate on just being an engineer, not just, but like only an engineer. That is another really nice thing. Sounds like a pretty great place to work.
I love it.
Oh man. And again, we're not being sponsored. We're not being sponsored by Murals.
But we are hiring.
Okay, so Mural, we have established, is a very good place to work, and they are hiring, so you can apply if you want to. But not everybody is going to get a job at Mural, right? So for people who cannot get a job at Mural, what do you think are some things to look for in a company, to help them to determine, is this a good company? Is this a positive space? Or, like maybe some of the things that you just love about Mural that they can kind of think about when applying to other places.
Yeah, so one of the things that I usually try to ask companies when I'm in the interview process is like, what's your procedure for actually shipping code? Like, what's the process? Do you have code reviews? If you have code reviews, how many people sign off? what's the process if there's conflicts? How do you actually interact with your team? Like, what kind of structure is in place? Like, is there a hierarchy? Is there not a hierarchy? It really depends on company whether they decide to have multiple people at different levels within a team, or if they all consider them homogenous. Like asking like what kind of things happen, like how do they handle conflict is something that I really like asking companies, just like they usually like asking you. Like it's important for both sides. Like I also tend to ask like for like time off, like how they prioritize, like because some companies do unlimited PTO, and for some companies unlimited PTO is a lie that they use to say that, you know, you can have as much time off as you want, but really it's really hard to approve that, and there's so many caveats, so it's not actually PTO and no one takes it. Other companies really prioritize PTO and even take it so far as some people are not taking PTO. We've noticed this, so now going forward every quarter, there's a day that everyone has off because we want people to take breaks. And so like figuring out how they feel about time off is also important. Asking about work-life balance is a good one. But sometimes it's important to like find people that work at the company and ask them rather than like asking the recruiter who's going to tell you the like company line. It's always better to ask real people who are going through it what their experience is.
Yeah, you learn so much that way. And I think asking for examples, kind of like you were saying, you know, the company asks you for these things. It's okay to ask them the same thing back, but like, give me an example of how your company prioritizes work-life balance, or how their paid time off is something that they prioritize for their employees or whatever. Because that does give you a good sense of the company, but also the team that you're working on. You know, if there's an emergency and you're worried that you might miss a meeting or something, like that shouldn't be the priority, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm missing a meeting. It should be like, I need to deal with this emergency. I think that's a pretty good indicator that maybe there's problems with the company or the team. So asking people about experiences and getting examples from people is super helpful.
Yeah, one question that I usually ask that I forgot up until this point because I'm good at things is how do you measure success? Because that'll usually like give you a good idea about where their priorities lie. Though I'll give you a caveat that some interviewers will not be prepared for that question and will waffle a bit just because it's not a question that everyone asks.
How do you measure success, Amy?
It's a good question. See, I'm not prepared. I'm proving my own point. I measure success when people feel comfortable being vulnerable and opening themselves up to admitting mistakes, admitting a lack of understanding, admitting that they need help. Like, you need to have a lot of workplace safety to get at that point that like individual people feel like they can be vulnerable that way. And it's only through people feeling like they can be vulnerable that you can help people succeed. So that's how I measure success.
That's a really good answer. Just saying. There's lots of bad ways that companies, measure success, or at least that I have that I would call bad, and that those are usually like more like check boxes or whatever, or how many things that they get done. Yeah, exactly. And your answer is not that, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the positive things that we've been talking about has to do with vulnerability and open communication. And those things are hugely important. And even going back to what differentiates a senior developer too, like having, I mean, there are plenty of very terrible communicators who are senior developers, but I think that a good senior developer has good communication skills. They're willing to listen to other people, and to do exactly what you said, like express when they need help with something or they don't have a clear understanding of what's going on, because that also sets the example for everybody else on the team that it's okay to have questions. It is okay to make a mistake, and it's how do you improve on that going forward.
Yeah, I like to say that there are no stupid questions. There's just stupid reactions to questions. Like the answerer is being stupid. It's not the question itself. I used to be part of a different developer community, and I built a Slack bot that would automatically respond to the phrase "stupid question" with "there are no stupid questions," just because I wanted to train the juniors out of saying it.
Love that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe we should get that on our Slack going.
I just had like 9 ideas all at once now.
Infinite possibility.
It happens every podcast. One of the guests says something, and both Bekah and I are just like, just thinking, just like, oh man, yeah, that's really cool.
Okay, so maybe there's not a connection here, but your background is in psychology, and now you're a developer. So have you utilized any of the things that you've learned with your degree, or can you talk about any transferable skills from that?
Definitely. I mean, interacting with humans in general, that like having some knowledge of how consciousness operates, like how people think and how different people think, like cultural differences. It definitely is helpful when you're dealing with communication between people, facilitating communication and making sure that different people are on the same page. It's something that I've always had, like I always consider it like a gift and a curse that I can hear 2 people talk about something and see their point of view, even if they're contrasting points of view, and then get them to realize that they're saying different things and coming from different places, but really their goal is the same, and you can get them on the goal if they just realize what the other person's saying. So you just have to like translate to the other person's speaking style, like how they're actually thinking. It thankfully that part of it is less. I've utilized that less at work, but I do find it helpful in general in life, especially Twitter.
Me, yeah, probably. I'll use a little bit of extra of that on Twitter. That's pretty cool. It sounds like the kind of stuff a really good manager says too. So I was kind of surprised that you hadn't done that managing stuff, but I bet you would be good at it if you wanted to. But then you'd be managing and not coding. So, look.
That's for the future.
Yeah.
What have been like some of the biggest surprises along your journey?
Good question. Well, I guess one of the surprises for me is like personally when I started getting into coding, I did coding all the time, like all the time. I had no other hobby. It was just developing things, creating things, and pushing code. Like my GitHub squares were always green, and people would always say, "Amy, you're gonna burn out. This is how people get burned out. Don't do it. It's bad." And I was always like, "No, I'll never stop loving coding. I love this. It's what I'll do for forever." But now I'm to the point where I code at work, and I don't usually code outside of work. Like I got really big into crochet, and so now I crochet, and I will talk people's ears off about regex because I love regex with a fierce, ungodly passion.
You're the only person in the world I've ever heard say that.
I know, which is also
You like a badge for that.
surprising to me, because when I first came into contact with regex, I hated it, like fiercely hated it. I avoided it at all costs. But then I decided that it was just gonna be one of those things that I fear, so I'm gonna get in contact with it. So I stop fearing it and I just conquer it. And so I got way down into the deep rabbit hole that is regex, trying to build a regex parser. And I'm still on that journey. It's still one of my side projects that always haunts me. It's just taunting me on a regular basis. But I have so much regex knowledge just like in my head at all times. Like the only reason I have any Stack Overflow credit is regex.
That's cool. Yes. No, I generally try to avoid it. But I mean, I know that there's some, there's problems where you recognize pretty quickly, like regex would be a good tool for this, and then I go Google for hopefully a regex solution. And if I can't find it quickly, I'm like, all right, forget this. We're going, we're doing for loops. We're going through it. That's awesome. So wait, you're writing a regex parser to parse regex, like
Yeah, so
regex strings?
so the idea.
Wait, can we just pause for a second? Because I know that not everybody listening to the podcast is going to be familiar
Regular
with.
expression.
Yeah. Can you just give a explanation?
Yeah, let's see if I can find a good regex explanation online. Because I don't know how I would describe it to other people. Do
Dan?
you have a good definition?
Oh yeah. No,
I
it's so it's an expression that's very regular. Regular expressions.
That's not it. Okay, a regular expression is a sequence of characters that specifies a search pattern in text. And
That's exactly what I said. All right, by the way.
I love you guys. So, the goal of my project, which is to build a tool that eventually would be extended to a VS Code extension. The goal is that it would scan a file, find anything that had a regular expression in it, and then if you hover it over the regular expression, it would break down what that expression is doing in
That would be dope.
human readable language. Just because there are so many bugs that can be caught that way, because like you don't realize that you're overmatching. And yeah, so it's a ongoing project that I started a while ago, and I've rewritten it like 3 times, and I keep finding new ways for it to be broken and new edge cases. But one day I will succeed.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so I mean, I was kind of joking, but yeah, you use if you are still unfamiliar with what regular expressions are, like you use them for things like for matching strings inside of a bigger string, right? So if you want to find all of the instances of Bekah in the podcast transcripts or something, that's a really simple one, right? Except that if you want to throw in, okay, so you want capital and lowercase in case the transcribing thing was messing up, right? There's little, and it looks like nonsense when you are first learning it, but little piece of code that you stick into the matching string so you can say, okay, just do lowercase, right? Or do all cases, ignore cases, things like that, right? And then you can start doing chunks of like patterns, right? So you could do any sentence that starts with Bekah is or something, right? Like that kind of thing. There's lots of there's a million different, I'm sure you can think of more interesting examples because I use them very infrequently, but that's what the tool, that's what the regular expression tool in general is used for. And pretty much all, I don't know about pretty much all, but like most of the coding languages you use have that ability right in them. And it's, I don't know, it's one of those things. It's like, it looks like nonsense when you look at it. And so if you're learning, you probably just ignore it, as fast as you can, run away from it.
I use and probably abuse it to do find replace a lot.
Yeah.
Text replacement. And whenever I'm like, I have a comma delineated line and I want to turn into an object, I'm going to use regex to find replace.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and so if you use VS Code, you have the option of turning that on in your find and replace in VS Code. It's regex is like hiding around everywhere, like a lot, and at
like
least
Garfield,
in
it's everywhere.
That's right. In developer tools, you'll see it and you'll turn it on and then you'll turn it off because it doesn't do what you expect if you don't aren't already familiar with it.
Yeah, you have to know what to escape if you
right,
have it
right,
set.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, no, that'd be a cool tool though. Being able to see that like sort of interactive stuff with the stuff you're typing. That'd be neat. So get to work on that.
I'm working.
Is it open?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it open source?
Yes. All of the versions are on public GitHub, but they might be broken at different parts. I don't know what state they're in. A lot of the things that I build are open source. So I think I have a React selector that's like accessible, and so that's open source. That's like the one repo that I currently have that actually has a contribution from somebody other than myself. It was very surprising one day when I got an email while I was at work that there was an issue, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to solve this issue. And I got another email also while I was at work saying I had a pull request to fix that issue, and it was magic.
Well, that's awesome.
We'll have to drop links to all this in the show notes.
This is parse_regex. That's one word.
That was one of them.
Is that the one we're talking about?
I think there's regular expression parser. There's like so many variations.
There's regex parser, but it's empty. So this might be not the right one. I'm looking around your GitHub.
I created a pull request today, and it was like one file changed, empty. I was like, oh, that's great. Glad that I was very effective with that. I'm still not sure how that happened. Well, so I think the goal maybe then for 2022 should be to complete one of those successfully.
Yes, that is my goal. I should stop spending all of my time crocheting and actually get to work on this regex project.
Let other people help you. I wasn't saying to do it by yourself. We've got the open source channel in Slack. And post every single one of them in there, and we'll make it a competition. We'll send swag to whoever wins.
That'd be amazing.
I'm having ideas again.
I'm down for it. Help would be lovely because knowing all of the parts of regex, and I've even sketched out all of the different chunks that is regex. I have an entire. I haven't ported it to Mural yet. I still have it on Whimsical, but it's just this very elaborate mind map of how regex expressions work.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That was redundant. I said regex expressions.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
Regular expressions. No, what do you call an individual
machines.
I guess you just call it a regular expression.
Yeah.
That's boring, though. Yeah. All right. We can fix English later. One thing at a time.
What is English?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. I didn't know what I was going to say.
You almost said something there.
I did. I had a thought and it left me.
I'm ADHD, sure man. Right I lost the thread.
Yes. No, well, we're 3 for 3 in this particular podcast for ADHD. So,
I really loved that discussion we had on Tuesday about ADHD. It was nice.
Yes, it's my favorite discussions when we're in a breakout room and everybody is talking about their ADHD and we go off on the best tangents. It's just so much fun.
There's so much kinship to be had from having a diverse brain mapping.
It is, yeah. So for those of our listeners who are not there on Tuesday, it was just kind of wrapped up. I don't even remember how we got started talking about ADHD, but
I
then
don't remember either.
a number of people had ADHD. Somebody else thought they might based on all of our conversation. Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with ADHD?
Yeah, sure. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. The only reason I got diagnosed was that my husband got diagnosed, and his psychologist was like, take this written assessment home with you and have your wife take it. Because in my professional experience, as someone with ADHD and who treats people with ADHD, if you're undiagnosed as an adult and you're married, your spouse also is undiagnosed with ADHD because they're the only people that can tolerate us for that long. And so I took the assessment and then the other assessment, and yeah, totally ADHD. And it was totally mind-blowing to me that, like, my entire life I've had this, like, anxiety that got worse, like, as I got older, to the point that, like, I would leave the house, and if it was a windy day, I would have in the back of my mind, at any point, a tree could snap a branch, and then I'm gonna be dead, because the branch inevitably is gonna find the back of my cranium and smash it, and that's gonna be the end of me. And so, like, I was always looking for danger at any situation. Like, couldn't sit in a room with my back facing a door. It was not a thing I could do. And so, like, I'd tried to get treated for anxiety, and it just, like, never seemed to work. And then I got diagnosed with ADHD, got treated for ADHD, and my psychologist was like, the only reason you have anxiety is because you have untreated ADHD. Once we treat that, that's probably going to go away. And that has been my experience. I am no longer an anxious anxiety muffin. I am like a normal human.
I when I was diagnosed a couple of years ago, the first thing that my doctor wanted to do was rule out, it's like, what is it, ADHD or is it anxiety? Like, what is starting this? And so we started by ruling out anxiety that was causing these symptoms, and then went on to be treated for ADHD, which has been really good and helped me to understand things much better, and also like how I communicate with other people, because my whole family is probably undiagnosed ADHD. And so we have a very unique way of communicating with each other that I just thought everybody communicated with each other in that way. And that's probably why I had a lot of problems forming friendships and relationships with people, because not everybody communicates in that way, apparently. But
You mean not everyone wants you to finish their sentences?
and take you on a 10-minute tangent before giving them a one-word answer.
But you have to have setup to stories, and sometimes those lead you to different stories that are tangentially related, and you have to go into those stories and then eventually circle back, and then you forgot what the original story was, and that's just how storytelling goes, right?
Yeah. I'm like one of two ways. So either I am like that web of storytelling, or like my brain is just very direct. So it's either you get a long story, or I'm just going to tell you how I feel right now in this moment. And that directness can be hard for some people, but it has been good to know that, okay, there's a way to approach this communication with somebody else and to talk through things to make sure that we are on the same page and that we can communicate with each other successfully. And yeah, I always appreciate hearing other people's stories. Actually, Dan, when I started working with Dan, he was talking about his ADHD, and that's how I got diagnosed with ADHD, because I was like, oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, I found out because I read a tweet that described my whole life. And I was like, oh, I started reading about it. No, I was reading about it a lot. And then, like, I was consumed by it, obviously, for a couple weeks. And then I was like, I went to talk to my wife, and I was, I need to talk to you about something. I think I have ADHD. And she's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, what? She's like, I just thought you knew. I was like, God, no. Who else knows? And she's like, I don't know. Everyone? All your friends? Anybody who's met you, I guess?
What? You just thought I was untreated on purpose this whole time?
Yeah, I don't know. No, yeah. I mean, and my the reason I just didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? I didn't know. I had to like never thought about it very much. I had to, if somebody asked me, I had the like sort of old stereotypical,
Yeah.
idea of what like ADD is, that kind of thing. And well, it turns out that's not, accurate. Obviously, like the hyper kid who can't, who's running around, can't, in school and making noise and stuff, and that wasn't ever me. But all of the everything else, made my whole life like a little more clear, like very all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think that's one of the like unfortunate parts about ADD is that most people just think of the hyperactivity as being symptomatic of it. And like the opposite is also kind of a symptom, right? Like daydreaming and not focusing on things is also a sign.
Yes. Yeah. And I mentioned this exact experience with my doctor a couple of days ago, actually. And he's like, yeah, well, those are the first kids that get diagnosed, the ones that are disrupting class really. And the teachers are like, you have to get him assessed or him or her assessed or he's not coming back. You know what I mean? Like, and so they get diagnosed, but the people who are, exactly, like quiet and more just different. My experience was just getting labeled as, well, he's smart, but he's lazy or whatever, like that kind of thing. My whole sort of school career, so, as it were. So no, it's been a very interesting and enlightening journey for me. But it's cool. I don't know. I'd encourage anybody to read more about it, think more about it. There's a lot of good resources out there these days. To learn about it, because that's what I did for a couple weeks, was just like read stuff. You don't have to be a doctor to at least start thinking about it.
I just messaged Dan and said, what should I read?
Yeah. Yep. And I sent her like a list of a billion things. So
I had a similar experience. I told my sister-in-law, I was like, I think I have ADHD. And she's like, oh, you didn't know? And I was like, oh, no. It does. It's all a lot of rethinking of those past experiences, but it's useful to understand how to talk about things and to know more about yourself and your interactions with other people. So yeah, I will second talking about it and learning more about it if that's something you think you might have.
Yeah.
And just a little shout out, if you are in virtual coffee, we have a neurodiverse channel in our Slack. So if you want to learn more or join and talk to people, like-minded people, and you're in virtual coffee already, feel free to drop in that channel too, because we hang out and chat there. Sometimes just post gifts and stuff, but it's a good. No. We were so close to ending.
We were really good.
This podcast before
GIF 2.
Couldn't just let it slide.
They're graphical.
Yeah, I can't. It's painful to my ears to hear that. I'm like, what is he talking about?
I mean, we don't say regex, so we shouldn't say GIF.
Except
you need a hard J.
Regex. Oh, now that's going to bother me too.
Because it would be regular expression.
Yeah, that's going to really bother me.
That should be regex, but
that's
it's
what
not regex.
I'm calling it regex from now on.
See, this is how I get the people who are hardlining GIF. I'm like, we're not consistent.
Well, that's true. It's again English, so that's sort of the only consistent thing is that it's inconsistent.
Well, Amy,
English major right here. English major.
I'm an English major.
Okay, well,
I have a master's in English. Master's.
Yes, no, we fight about this quite a bit.
Never stops. Well, what I was gonna say is thanks, Amy, for being here today, and during this conversation with us. This has been fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Is there anything else you want to share, or any last words of wisdom you would like to leave for our listeners?
Good question. Which is how I preface everything, because I need to think about it. And I would just say that times are hard, but we don't have to be. And like try to be kind to other people, even if it's hard sometimes.
Like if they're saying GIF.
Like if they're saying GIF and you want them to say GIF, or they're saying regex and you want them to say regex. Compassion.
Compassion.
I'm sorry I ruined that. It was like very meaningful and great, and I just could not stop myself.
I understand the impulse, so I can't even say anything. I do it all the time.
All right, thanks so much, Amy, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Amy.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. This episode was produced by Dan Ott and Bekah Harald-Weigel. If you have questions or comments, you can hit us up on Twitter at virtualcoffee.io or email us at podcast@virtualcoffee.io. You can find the show notes, sign up for our newsletter, check out any of our other resources on our website, virtualcoffee.io. If you're interested in sponsoring Virtual Coffee, you can find out more information on our website at virtualcoffee.io/sponsorship. Please subscribe to our podcast and be sure to leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.